Producer dude, we have another character. I'm starting to see a trend here.
Lots of characters in the fishing industry.
There really is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just the ones that
I'm learning that.
I'm not sure if that's just the ones that are the ones that hang around or the ones that are still standing, but we have a longtime friend of mine, Brian the Bro, they call him, Brosdahl, and he is kind of the ice guy. That's kind of what he's known for, even though I'm sure we'll talk about some other things because he's been an open water guide and tournament fisherman, and I used to fish against him for a number of years there. But he's kind of a character. He talks as much as I do, but he usually got something pretty good to say. So
unlike you.
Right. Exactly. Precisely. That's why we have such amazing guests on the Bigwater podcast. I don't know if we should keep him waiting any longer because me and you are just going to insult each other on and on and on. But what about we bring this man in? Brian Brosdahl, aka the Bro. Welcome to the Bigwater podcast. Thanks for giving us your time. I appreciate it. Me and you have done a little never fishing in the same boat. We've been around each other a whole bunch through the business end of things and pop up at all the same stuff, but it's good to kind of sit down and talk a few stories, a little bit of chaos. I definitely want to talk to Heather a little bit too, because she's obviously my favorite Brosdahl. So
everybody likes her more than they like me.
Yeah, it's easy. That's ginger guys. We're always, deep duty, but so, people, they probably know you for the ice thing, right? That seems to be kind of your niche. And I know living in your neck of the woods, you get it for 5-6 months and we get it for 5 days. But how did this whole thing start? Everybody has the same story. I love to fish, but most people don't have the balls to see through the hard times to make a living like you have for so many years fishing. What was it like that in the early years in northern Minnesota for you?
Well, you learned how to kill deer and eat deer, and no, it wasn't easy. I remember many nights loading wood on this ramp to bring to the furnace, and just happened to be a furnace in the basement. And how could there be anything worse? And cutting and sawing and I like propane now. Just give me propane. Just turn it on, and it might be becoming a cake eater a little bit, but just give me propane. I like an on switch. Maybe it's because that's what I have in my boat, and it's like Humminbird. You turn the on switch and everything's easy to use. I need something like that. But in the old days, it wasn't easy, and we're not money motivated. But don't tell any of my sponsors that. But we can live very frugal, and we always have, and that's the thing in this industry. If you want money, you can make it in fishing, but you're going to be a small percentage of fishing truly to make a living at it. But I guess I just wanted to be around water, because water is my big excuse to be in extraordinary places and see stuff and hear stuff, and water's a magnet to me.
Me too. So was it guiding? Is that kind of how because you're in northern Minnesota, you've always been up that neck of the woods, right?
Yeah. Not so much up here. In the early days, I would take people for anything that's open water muskie, panfish, walleyes. The difference between all of those species is I still, to this day, from 28 years ago, even 27, from 25 to 28 years ago, I can go out on a panfish spot in the spring, and the same boats I guided that many years ago are still fishing the same spots. And it's not like that with walleyes. Walleyes change, but it's one and done with panfish. They just want to know the spot, and then they go for it. So that's why I do walleyes, because it's panfish. You go up in the weeds by a red house, and you're up in the bulrushes, and people find their way back, and they're not bashful. They'll just go back and keep taking them, and it's their spot. But walleyes are different. You don't have any weeks the same. And I have clients that say that in 15 years, we've never started on the same spot and sometimes the same lake twice. And they're just amazed. And it's a hunt and it's a race. And I'm not on giant water like you are, but they keep you guessing, but there's a slight pattern, and so guiding was never super. It paid the bills. Let's just say that. And sponsorships help pay the bill, a little gas and groceries. But I've had sponsors for a long time, cash sponsors, in over 25 years. And I'm kind of you might say I just happened into it. I've always been into fishing, and you find out that, and you know this, even if you're in fishing enough, you don't have to pursue it. It comes to you, and you get phone calls, and if people know you as the person for that spot or area or what you condone sells, they will call you, and so you got to make yourself known.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Cash sponsorships can be hard to get and harder to keep, but if you're doing the right stuff, it's surprisingly, I don't want to use the word easy, but I think that I never really thought about it like with what you said about the panfish thing, backing up a little bit, because that from a guide, I'm just so not used to that, because you can see across the lakes and throw a baseball across some of the lakes that you may fish, little sloughs and small deals and little bottlenecks. But out where I'm at, I mean, I tell people all the time, they're like, oh, we'll come here tomorrow. I'm like, go for it. They aren't going to be here this afternoon. Like they move 5, 10, 15, 20 miles in a day. And we've actually had some guys on that anybody listens to our podcast, Chris Vandergood and Travis Hartman, both the fisheries guys for the Great Lakes area. They put the radio trackers, or acoustic telemetry is the proper term. And the amount that these fish move, it is insane at how far they'll move.
Job security.
Oh my gosh. A little sidebar for somebody that hasn't listened to our stuff. They had a muskie up in Lake St. Clair, and it went to Buffalo, New York.
Oh, jeez.
And town producer dude, if you remember this, every 5 years that muskie and a couple other ones make that trip all the way to New York. They can't figure out why, but it's like every 4 or 5 years they do that, and then then they hang around in Lake St. Clair the other 3 or 4 years.
The food must be good there.
Another one. That's one of my favorite lines. Is one of your northern Minnesota boys I used to fish with quite a bit. He's always told me, fish don't go far from the grocery store. It doesn't matter what species they are.
No, they want groceries.
Yeah. So the ice fishing deal, I mean, was that just because, I would say that Dave Gens is kind of the guy that, people think of with the fold over shack and all that stuff. I work with those guys on the ice team thing, and that's, they get a lot of credit for that. But people in your neck of the woods, they make more money, let's say a resort or something, ice fishing, because they can run more people and just as many days as they do, or longer, more days than you would have a summer season. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's, ice fishing is a culmination of so many people's efforts, and he was a focal point of it, and he's a great person, and we're friends. But there was a lot of people I've always looked up to Dave and Doug Stange, anybody that would get the word out. And when I was younger, I remember reading a lot of how he approached things as a teacher, Doug Stange, and the Linders dabbled in ice, but they did it really well, and their stuff stuck to home. And even Tom Grunewald, there's a whole bunch of people, and some of the hardcore Mille Lacs ice fishing people that were farmers in the summer and very techno savvy in the winter. When I was a kid, I was around these people, and they were using rods and reels when everybody laughed about rods and reels, and they're using fly reels way back then and jigging with small spoons, Swedish pimples back then before anything else existed. We're talking about, right after the wheel was invented, but it always impressed me. And that was right on the verge when electronics come out. And when I was a kid, I made my own ice fishing rods, and I can't tell you, it's so accepted now. But back then, it was people would laugh, because it's not a jiggle stick stuck in the ice. It's not a tip up. It's not a rattle reel on the wall. And now you think who would ever want to hand over hand anything? So when I see, I'm sorry, guys out there with the schoolies, that doesn't push the needle in ice fishing. It's really cool for you right now, and it's always been there, but it's light. I get it. But it doesn't push the needle in ice fishing. There's no company that's going to, excel because you're using a little plastic reel. And I know that it's a light thing, it's a tournament thing, it's, so we're advanced. We've got super technical rods and reels and electronics, forward viewing. It's amazing. Tonight I watched walleyes come in from 10 feet away and swim up, and I could cater to them on Mega Live and watch them come up and bump my lure, circle around, and I started pulling it away, and they'd hit it, and I'd set the hook, and you could see their top fin. You could tell they're not a pike. It was really cool.
Well, we'll get into that because I definitely want to talk with you about that. But I mean, let's back up a little bit. Even in my lifetime, right? I mean, Dave is considered the godfather ice fishing or what have you, and because of some of those early advancements. But that's only like, let's say 40 years, which in the big picture is not much. And when you look at like when you started ice fishing, right, which was before me, I'll give you that. You know, you're out there in Carhartts at best, getting soaked, freezing your butt off. Now we've got these float suits. Like you said, we've got the spooler reels. I mean, the shacks are just amazing. They're lighter. They're more just the advancement in the shacks in our time for sure of going to the insulation from just the regular tent material.
Yeah,
it's like ridiculous. You almost don't need a heater unless you live in your neck of the woods in the middle of the winter with one of those.
That's absolutely true. And you know, my first flip style house I actually bought from Dave Gens at Vado's Bait. And there's a lot of people know Vado's Bait Express because you can order maggots and stuff. But I bought it from him personally as a kid, and that was my first flip style house. It was the white one, and
you still have it.
No, I used it till it was shreds, and you know, I'm many years later, and I was there, and many years later, I'm with another company, but it all boils down to the fishing industry was a real tiny little thing back then, and I remember there's guys like the Grizz and the Capras and all these people that were, and you know, Gary Roach. And you know him very well.
I know the Roacher. We've had him on the podcast. Can you believe we got him to do a podcast?
Oh, he's awesome. And the guy has always loved ice fishing. So he's seen the stuff from the humble beginnings. Felagy is one of those guys that figured out how to ice fish at a long time ago and find mud flats out in the middle of nowhere. But I still wish way back then I would have bought land on the Catawba Peninsula near Lake Erie there, so I could have a little spring home to go to. But it's too rich for my blood now.
I'm not very far from there as we speak. Actually,
I know it's a cool area, and I always like that when we're past winter and everybody's all excited and everything's thawing and melting, but you can't get on the ice anymore, and the Rainy River is closed. I always run to your neck of the woods because you're mowing lawns in your area. The grass is green. The birds are starting to make nests. And back at home, it looks like Halloween. Everything's dead. The grass is brown. And then you get snowstorms, but there's no reason. You can't get out to the ice unless you got a Willcraft. And the river's closed over there. So that's when everybody either goes to the liquor store or they go fishing. And I choose to go fishing.
That's probably good for both of us. But so kind of again backing up a little bit again. I mean, be honest. You're a straight shooter like I am. Did you get into this ice fishing thing the way that you are? Because I'm not taking away from you. You obviously been a successful tournament angler and open water guide. But people know you as an ice guy. I mean, maybe that's not fair to say. Is it?
No, it's true because you know in the tournaments. I never won the FLW and never won the NWT. I've had third, fourth. I was king of fourth place for a couple of years, and just I was up there. And then my last year, I probably had one check cash, and then you know I didn't have enough time to devote to it. I was a fishing guide playing in a millionaires club, and you got to have time. You got to have equal time. You know, and I did find schools of fish, and sometimes I put it together. But it's when you're in that circle, if you get any of it, you're doing good. And I think it really helped me improve the experience my clients have when I go fishing. But I've also learned to tone it back a little bit because they're not out for a hyper. Let's glean through the school super fast, and they want to enjoy it. And consistency is important, but you know. It's time away, and other than that, I loved it. Tournaments to me were an excuse to be in extraordinary places, but it's a vacation with a little bit of stress. Because I would
say a little more than a little bit.
Well, no, a little bit of stress because you're there, and I have to go to Erie. And you talk to everybody; they all got the same the same knowledge gathering, and then there's people with teams, and they spread out. And I was a one-man wolf pack, you might say, like that movie, Las Vegas movie. But I just went out there, and I
you'd have been great in that movie, by the way. You could have been the man in The Hangover.
It would have been fun, yeah. And but when
can I interrupt you, because this is so left field, scatterbrained. But I was at a deal with some sponsors in Orlando. Do you know where this might be going? And we're in the ice bar, and they got these big jackets on. And some of the guys with me, again, other sponsors, are like, "Who's that idiot over there in the t-shirt?" So you didn't have the big parka and the hat thing on, and you're walking through there, and you came up to me and you're like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And one of my sponsors was like, "Why does that not surprise me that you know him?"
Oh, it was cool in there, but it felt good. I mean, here I am. I'm a person that lives. If you take the whole year's average, it probably averages out to 50 degrees. I mean, we were 90s this year, but we get minus 40 here and a lot of below zero. You start out below zero and then you make it up to 10 or 20. Well, anyway, I go down there and it's hot out there. I mean, you're talking 80.
And humidity is just ridiculous.
It's like Minnesota. We get real muggy, and it's muggy in Florida. It's that jungle heat kind of thing that we have up in Minnesota. And so there's the ice bar. I was in there. I was very happy. I was elated to be in there, and it was so nice. I could have just, but then after a while, I was like, okay, I've cooled down now. The sweat is frozen on my body, and but I tell you what, you could tell I enjoyed it.
Producer dude, you ever been to an ice bar? Do you know what he's talking about?
I'm assuming it was it's a room at the conference or something.
No, it's an actual bar that is literally like a walk-in freezer, and everything is ice. Like the counter is ice. Like everything in there, it's below freezing. It's literally a bar.
Oh, I thought it was a test room at ICAST or something.
Well, I think
no.
15 below was the name of it. 15 below.
I thought it was like 0 degrees, but I don't know.
5 below or something like that. It was something below zero.
I'm betting the ice bar in Orlando, Florida. Before we hang up with us, the producer dude will be our guy and get this information out. But you go in there and they have these like giant parkas, like these big, like I don't know if they're real fur or not, probably not, but these giant like Russian hats, and everybody puts one of these things on and they go in the ice bar, and it's quite literally everything's covered in ice.
Yeah,
and you're in there in a t-shirt, and I was like, okay. But anyway, backing up, because me and you like are all over the place like a fart in a jug. My question was, which is good, is did you get into the ice fishing thing just because there's more of an opportunity? To be honest, more of an opportunity to make money, or is it because like that's 5 or 6 months a year for you? Or
I love ice fishing, I really do, and it's my favorite part of fishing. I mean, I've been asked many times, what would you take? I would take ice fishing, but I like bites, whether it's open water or ice. And I would say ice fishing to me is a lot more peaceful. You don't have I have nothing against wake boats, but I ain't got no wake boat just about throwing me out of my boat. And I don't have, like, how many pontoons and tritoons have they sold with 200 plus horsepower motors? The lakes I'm on are up in the woods of northern Minnesota, but they're getting so much traffic. One of the lakes I guided on, Cass Lake, had 1,400 boats on it on the 4th of July. And so, on the 5th of July, I didn't go back there. I went elsewhere. I found a lake that had 5 boats on it, and it was great. But I got to say,
I 100% agree. But I have a funny thing. You may not even have seen this. I won't say the company, but a company me and you both work with, a couple of our bosses there were out doing a media shoot on the ice like a week ago, maybe not even that. You know what I'm talking about? And they're doing a shoot. They're doing a shoot, making a commercial thing. And some dude, do you remember? Did you see this? They drill a hole like 6 feet behind them, and they're like literally in the middle of shooting this camera deal. And this guy just walks up and drills a hole. There's no one else on the lake. He drills a hole like 6 feet from him. And I'm like, and I'll tell you afterwards about it. But one of the guys put it up on his social media, his personal social media, and I was laughing. And I don't know if you get that. I mean, I'm on obviously the Great Lakes. I mean, it's a lot harder to not only get on somebody because of the sheer volume, but also we're not fishing generally a little point or a weed break or something. Like, we're fishing these mud flats that are 5 miles long, right? And the fish are here, then they're gone. And people still, it's crazy to your point of like, yeah, you don't have wake boats, but don't you just have some knuckleheads, just jackasses that just drill on top of you?
Well, I always figure someone moving in on me might be a friend I haven't met yet. I have to think something positive because I approach it from a perspective of, hey, this, you don't know. I mean, they don't know. They're probably not from there, because I get a lot of people that look for me, and if they find me, they will drill up. But they give me a little buffer zone. Sometimes they don't, but I'll help them out. I give them a little bit of advice, and then sometimes they call me later. But you really don't want to do that when someone's guiding, because I get clients. I even tell my clients this, not to start nothing. They'll ask them if they want to split the bill and stuff like that, and but it's what it is they're just people, and they might be nuts, maybe they're not, but sometimes people do things, and they, you just got to give them the benefit of a doubt. So that's me being, maybe part Sweden, kind of neutral.
You're too kind and too gracious.
I'll help them out, and if they're drilling too many holes and scaring fish, I'll give them some of my holes that I drilled, and just tell them, just fish right there. But that being said, in other areas, in other areas in Minnesota, I've heard when it gets busy here, and you have up to maybe 5, 6, 7 states fishing in an area, that people will get so close that they're fishing in each other's holes. And there's been altercations and police called for fights that started because a guy drilled a hole it's froze over, but it was from the day before. And he said, that's my hole from the other day. So some people just get a little bit too hot under the collar. And if they move in on me, I'll just leave. I just go somewhere else.
Producer dude, you don't even need to hear me say this out loud, but bro is a lot more tame than I am, right?
Yeah, he sounds like he just there's lots of ice. I'll make another hole. You would fight over that hole. You would be guy that would be that's my hole.
Well, one of the altercations, it was a really nice guy here, and he's big guy. He's like 6'4", and he's a construction guy, and another guy from another state said, you need to get out of my hole. I drilled that hole yesterday. And he told him, you're going to have to get a 2x4. He goes, are you threatening me with a 2x4? I said, you're going to need that to stop me. And so he called the cops, and he said, you threatened him with a 2x4. I said, no, I just told him he better have one if I come after him.
I start singing.
Yeah, Heather starts singing.
Is that our favorite Heather right there? I start
singing, and they leave.
She'll sing
naturally.
Heather, show yourself. Heather, show yourself right now. Where are you at? You're in I'll hear it. Look at your nice yellow Aquaview shirt.
No, I was just going to say, I start singing, and then naturally they skedaddle.
Is that because of your bad rock singing, or what?
I'm a horrible singer, and that's my device.
She's a good performer. Some, like I always tell her that some of these bands, like look at the Stones. Mick Jagger could never sing, but he sounded great. So you throw in a little move and you start going with it, right?
Just attitude, right?
I'm a fisherman, and when it comes to music too, whatever's on the jukebox, I'm fine with, and she's very specific with what she likes, and I could go to anybody's band or party and be fine with it.
You're much easier going. Have you actually seen a fight because of ice fishing, like in person?
No, I just hear people, and then that's what she wanted me to show you. She's actually, this is her music,
good album.
Producer dude is our music guy.
Yeah.
And she actually met Johnny Rotten, so that's her claim to fame too, and the whole band. And they're real mellow, and I had to make sure that I could get her out of there. You hear rock and roll stories, right? So
I got to give her kudos too for vinyl.
This conversation is going hard left.
We'll go back to fishing.
Okay. No more distractions, please, from the rock and roll gallery over there.
She is a rock and roller.
I like country. You've ever looked at my TikTok? There's a lot of country on there, and I don't like just one kind. And if you want to throw in some anything, something funky, I'll listen to it. In a boat, I don't care, but I like country. Probably is my favorite, and rock and roll if I'm tired, to wake me up when I'm driving.
This is interesting. I want to still talk about fights. Have you seen a fight on the ice? Like as much ice fishing as you do, and I know there's knuckleheads. There's knuckleheads everywhere.
I not too much. I've seen yelling and a little bit on the ice over holes or a decision for driving on to a lake with a truck and getting buried in slush. And I see people yelling, but I haven't seen any fights. I sure have calmed people down when I pull up with my track truck and I pull them out. Then they stop fighting with each other. But that being said, it's kind of hard on your machinery to do that all day long. But it's everybody seems good. The only places I've actually seen altercations is you go to get something to eat afterwards at a local bar and restaurant, and those are the people fighting outside. If you're there too long, you might see one.
Well, that might be brown bag induced, as we say.
Yeah, and
I can tell you one of the coolest ones I saw on the ice. If there's maybe that's not a good phrasing of it, but there was a guy in an airboat who didn't really know how to drive it, and out here in this, our wind is just crazy. And he took about 20 little flip over shacks that were all right tight together. You get these little groups, you've seen them out here.
Oh yeah.
And the airboat was like aiming like left, and the wind blew him right, and he went right through those guys. And I mean, the guys were in their shacks getting pushed. Can you imagine, just ripped right out of your hole? I mean, he had them guys that were pinned up against the thing, and all I can tell you is there was some fists thrown that day.
Yeah, that's stuff happens out there, and that's where it's interesting. Let's just say that. I'm glad I wasn't those guys.
Yeah, I mean, as a guide, I mean, stories. Everybody loves stories. I mean, you've got to have. I mean, I can remember covering you doing some media when I used to work for FLW, like at that Leech Lake tournament.
Yeah,
and I can remember there was some shenanigans that went on there because you were fishing this back little area. A bunch of guys followed you in, and did you have something with a co-angler happen there too? I don't really remember.
Oh yeah, well, I was in first place on day 4, and so if it was 3-day tournament, I would have won it and I would have killed everybody. But day 4. I went and I'd get my unders. You're only allowed 2 fish over at the time 18, or they can't touch 18. So 18 to 26. And the 2 days prior, I got my 2 over 26. I had usually 28s, and I got all my overs. And so I go get my unders, then go get my overs. And we just got our last under. It was 17 3/4. And it was just a fat little fish. And I'm like, that's going to give us an extra pound over the day before. Let's go get the big fish. Now, great job. Here, I opened a live well door and I said, throw it in. And he threw it in the lake. And so we had 3 hours. And it took about 4.5 hours to replace that fish. And would you have gone for small fish at the time? They were kind of. There wasn't much for small fish in my big fish area. They were just, I ended up in 3rd place, and it's what it is. I mean, the difference between, I think it would have been 80,000 and 13, or was it 15,000, something like that. So it's, he made a mistake, and right away he started panicking and hyperventilating. And I said, hey, don't worry, it's my fault. I'll be clear. I opened the well and said, throw it in. So I said, I'll tell you to throw it in the well next time. Actually, no, don't throw it, walk it and set it in. But I would have never thought it. And so a plan that I had, I probably should have went for big fish and just had less fish but I had a spot that was good for 2. I caught 5 fish over one day, and the smallest was 27 up to 32 inches. And it's sometimes you're not allowed to cull, so you take your first big fish. And so I had a pretty good spot, and I know we would have got at least one for sure. But all I needed is, I didn't need much to win that, and that was a big turning point. But you can't get mad. There's a lot of stress on the co. The co had, I think he had like, I don't know what he had to win. It wasn't that much, but he could have won 20 grand if he would have probably, But anyway, it takes 2, So I'll take that third.
Oh my God!
I'll take that third place. And it was a great experience. And And let's just say that it was a waste of big fish spots or couple big fish spots because they didn't get touched that day. And I probably, after that, I went for the big fish and then skipped the little fish. But that's not always the way either. You have to have the biggest of each category. You can't go, it's like on Mille Lacs one time.
So if you would have caught a 28 though that day, if you'd have got an over or two, you still would have won though.
If I would have got a 26 and only had, without even that other one, I would have won. I didn't lose by that much. I think I lost by 3 or 4 pounds, but it was still a cool experience, and that's a lot of minnow money, you might want to say. But so let's go the other way. Let's get a big fish. Mille Lacs is full of fish, but that slot is really tough out there. And when I did an FLW league on Mille Lacs, nobody was getting anything over 28. And that's how big they had to be over, or under 17 or under 18 again. So I was out fishing. You catch so many big fish. I caught one that's another 26. It was at 28 and a quarter. So I measured it and I can't believe I got one. I threw it in the well. Then I threw in a 17 and 3/4, another one. And then I started throwing back 16 and a half and 17s because I'm just waiting for perfect ones. And then they stopped biting. And from 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock, I went to every corner of that lake, and I ended up keeping 15s, and I missed her by just ounces, and I ended up in second place. So is it bad?
Ouch.
It's what it is, right? So second place is good.
Decision making, right? I mean, you're right on Monday, you're wrong on Tuesday.
Well, I'm just lucky to have that fish, and the winner had a perfect stringer of unders, and they're real nice ones. But I would have crushed it. I mean, it could have gone through. But I sorted those fish out. So when I was at Devil's Lake one time, at one of the championships, I kept a big fish right away, and it was a 30-incher. And that was a no-brainer. It was my first drop. And that fish, I had the co-angler went to net it, and he hooked my puppet minnow on the outside of the fish's mouth on the net. So it was shaking. So he didn't know what to do. And we were in big waves. And I said, all you can do now is roll it like a tennis racket and flip it in the boat. So he said, what do you mean? I said, turn it underneath him and flip it in the boat. And he flipped it, and it landed on the railing, and it rolled inside. And
oh my God.
He was useless for about 20 minutes. The guy's heart must have been racing. I know he sat down and smoked like 5 cigarettes, and I said, you got to get back in the game, buddy. And while he was doing that, I netted my own fish a couple of times. And I always like to talk after that. Oh, that never happened to me before. And when you hear that, you know.
So, hey, I'm going to tell you right now, as a guy who's guided, I don't know, pushing 5,000 days or something insane at this point, you do not let anyone touch the net. Like I probably let them drive my truck before the net. I mean, I use a big net. It's a little different deal than what you're doing. But The things that I've seen with people, if you want to have a video of just screw ups, just hand somebody a net. I don't care if they think they know what they're doing or not. The first thing to do is they stick it in the water, or they don't realize the drag, and oh my gosh.
Well, and it happens fast. It happens fast. You're catching pike out there. But the first fish was just a monster, and we got it. And then there again. So I kept everything, and then it was a good tournament. Day 2 wasn't quite as good when things laid down, but it was so rough that you could have actually knocked your windows off under a bridge that normally is. If you stand, you'd have to stand on a ladder to touch. When you're going up, you think you're going to lose your windows under this bridge coming from bay to bay. But what an amazing fishery. And tournaments are fun. They're an excuse.
By the way, that's a good place to lose a whole lot of puppet minnows right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many did you dump in there? Because I know about that spot, and there's probably about 10,000 of them already stuck down there. You're probably snagging on other ones.
Well, and on that famous spot at takeoff off that road, whatever, I was pulling up something and it was coming, and I'm like, well, geez, I hope this ain't like a dead cow or something out here, and I'm bringing it up, and a boat went by really fast and really close, and one of the tournament boats gave me a little bit of a wake, and the rod shot out of my hands. And with braid, you get to the end of the tournament, you don't have no fluorocarbon leader anymore. And you put a fluorocarbon leader so you have a place to break your line. So I'm using 12-pound braid. And when that boat went by, just about knocked me out of my boat, the rod shot out of my hands, and I watched it on my Humminbird go all the way down to the bottom.
Oh,
and I was so close to catching, and I bet you it would have been a pile of jig style baits. And I was hoping to get it just to see what it was. And but we already had our fish, and the boat was covered in blood and slime, and all of our towels were slimed up. And I just remember being at this bridge, and you think you're going to be the only 1 or 2 or 3 boats, and I had 9 boats next to me. And you had to defend your ground. I had a rock under me, and I wasn't letting anybody on it. And I got a couple 26s really fast and some 19s, so you're happy.
Spot lock is really helpful right now.
Now it is. Back then it wasn't. And you're in heavy wind, and by the time it adjusted, you'd be banging off boats. You couldn't use the old one, the new one. I could have sat there and I could have had lunch, after I got my fish, and you don't want to give up your spot. But anyway, so you're racing to these areas. You're in giant waves, and there's people hitting and knocking off their lower units here and there. But it's still an absolute blast. And what I take with me on this, in this tournament, I was moving my puppet minnows really slow, and I was bringing them in the boat, and none of the other pros seen this, but in little like Cool Whip type of bowls, I had scent. So I could bring in my puppets at the same time, dip them, and then drop them back down. And then instead of ripping it, people were ripping them, were catching pike after pike after pike. And they're dealing with pike, and the pike were going all over the place. And they moved them slow, and I caught walleyes. So, but,
Okay, let's back up. Because this is a tip here. I'm going to steal it. What kind of scent were you doing that you're dipping in a bowl that's staying on?
Back then, I was using Dr. Juice.
Oh, yeah, I got some.
And I just poured it. I just squeezed it in. And if a wind gust would have hit it, my boat would have stunk for a year.
Oh, but that stuff is nasty.
It's nasty, but I dunked it in there and just moved it slow. And the water was murky and churned up. And I had boats all around me, and these fish are swimming through this field of lines, but I was moving them slow. And then as soon as you hit the bottom, you got to pull it away. Otherwise, you've lost, because there's fabric under the bridge with rocks and line draped all over. So you had to touch and get out of there. And then, of course, never gave it as a tip, but I upsized my treble hooks, and I put some just one size up Gamma Cats with trebles on the bottom of those. But we could go on and turn.
Why do the manufacturers not do that? I do it on every single one of mine, because if I don't, it's just, why do they not do it?
I don't want to do that where I'm catching eater walleyes or not in a tournament, because you're probably not going to lose them anyway. But in that situation with all that wave, all that action, and that's a big money fish, you want to get it up there. But when I'm pitching and you're out guiding, or if you're out fishing, you're not going to lose them.
I don't know about that. Ice fishing.
Big ones, giant ones, maybe. I'll upsize Lake of the Woods where you're at, obviously. But if I'm on a lake where I know I'm not going to catch anything over 23 inches, I don't need that big hook, because sometimes we're catching jumbo perch mixed in, and it's just a little bit more hardware in that thing. So there's a time and a place, and I even size them up. Like when I go to Lake of the Woods, and you are going to catch big fish if you fish hard up there. You're going to catch some fish. You can catch a 30 pluser. Not every time, but sometimes you catch multiples over 28, and there's a lot of slot fish, and they got a big jawbone, and you catch pike that are over 40 inches. So I upsize there, but if there's an area where there's perch and other stuff, I don't want that big hook. You just don't need to.
That kind of brings up another question. So do you think, just simple things like that treble hook thing, me and you do a lot of product design and working with the companies with that. I know I need honest bro now. Don't lie to me. I'm going to have a hook to lie detector test up to you, and producer dude will shoot you. Do you think that the companies are worse or better about listening to stuff now?
There's a renaissance now. I would say that like in lures, my company over there, Northland Tackle, they are all they're as much as you want to give to them, they'll pick up. But they've always been like that. In all my companies, they listen. And electronics companies, they got engineers. Never you used to meet them in the past. Now you know who they are, and they want to know everything now. I think there's a progressiveness to it, and they all want the same thing, something that's just catches a wicked amount of fish, and I'm seeing it more than ever. But it was always there, but it's the race to be the best, I think, right now, and so trying to improve on something in different categories is harder. In electronics, there's been a conveyor belt, but now the conveyor belt is getting tougher because we're bending technology. We're inventing technologies. Now you take forward viewing, Humminbird made their own technology because everything else was patented. So you got to give them the cred. They're cutting edge, and their engineers are way out there. And what do they got to come next? A lot more. But in tackle, and how do you reinvent a fish house? How do you reinvent a tip up? How do you reinvent a rod? And there's, in rods themselves, there's a bunch of rods. They all come from the same origin. They just spin and paint them differently here and give them a cool name. But who makes the rods from scratch? Who has their own,
Well, you're right. It's the technology, the blank materials. It's crazy with that stuff. But so when you started, you kind of threw some big ones in there. But we'll back up. Forward facing sonar or whatever, like Mega Live. Like me and you, we're running Humminbird Mega Live. That is just, I don't know. I think even more so to me than side imaging. This is a technology that if you're not using it in the next few years, you're going to get drastically left behind. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely agree with you. And, I didn't really do tournaments this year, but when I could pick out which fish is the biggest one, there's a screen snapshot from earlier tonight. I had a big walleye come in. And did I get him? Yeah, I got a picture of him. But yeah, if you're in a tournament and you're going along with side imaging, I had side imaging, and I only did a couple tournaments last year because I didn't have forward viewing, and I was waiting for my company. But the people who were out there who had side imaging would see 3 walleyes, and the other boats were picking off the biggest of the 3 walleyes. See the difference? You just want to get one of the 3, and they're picking off the 27 while you're casting into the 223s. That's the difference. And they're also fishing in 10 feet of water, 4 to 5 feet down, and setting the hook without looking at their rod tip or their bobber.
It's crazy. And you look at like on Humminbird, or even me and you were starting to put this on the social media stuff, to be able to watch the fish swim at you and see. I mean, here, let's talk about this. Let's just talk about me and you. How many hours did we spend trying to learn something, or just how many fish did we, before me and you use some experience to switch to a different lure or locations or whatever to try to get them to bite, where you can look down immediately and know, hey, if they don't want a puppet minnow today, they want that.
Yeah, and you can just see it's really cool. And here's me just trying to hold the phone and jig to a school of perch.
That's
just and then there's a fish coming up the hole. But as you see me land it, watch the voracious school of perch. You can that's how good a camera guy I am. Okay, right there. They're all waiting for it to come down, and you could see. Oh, I tell you.
But don't you? I mean, to me, one of the biggest advantages of this, aside from being able to pick out the fish, obviously, is when fish are like, hell no with your presentation, whether it's the type of bait, right?
Yeah, it is absolutely the truth. And it's just fun. And, you can see how they act. And walleyes get real fidgety. If they want it, they'll circle around. And you didn't see that traditionally, right, except on a Humminbird, or not Humminbird, on the Aquaview. You'd see it disappear around you and come. And then if you had the quad camera, which you got on now, you could see what it's doing. But still, here you could see even past your field of view, it's coming around. You're like, here it comes. And then as it's coming through, you continue doing your jigging cadence. And then as it comes close and it touches it, you just slowly start jigging it away, and boom, they take it. And that's that's what I had to do here for my walleyes the past couple nights. And where would you have that without this? And I don't care what anybody's got. You can do all these comparisons or anything. I'm walking around with a Helix 8 G4N, and I could walk around. That thing's light in the new shuttle with a lithium battery, and it's got more pixels. It's a clear thing, and I've got my transducer and no black box. I've got the stick, and I've got this light unit. So and I know I had a guy who had this other unit, and it's just this great big thing, and he's got all kinds of stuff going on. It's heavy, and people are leaving them at home if they get too bulky. So I think we all wanted giant screens, and now we're going back.
Yeah, some of them you can't even fit them in a milk crate or anything, right?
No, you can't. And so carry around a 10 or 12 or 15-inch screen for a few trips, and then carry a Helix 8 G4N. And the 4, now that you could use a 3 or 4, the 4 is just so great, and it's so clear. And the thing with Humminbird, as they get improvements, they'll give you updates, and you can Bluetooth them right onto your unit. So the customer service and the mapping, the Lake Master, come on, it's an open.
But there's the deal right there. I mean, I don't care if you're where I'm at or where you're at. Probably one of the biggest advantages with the Humminbird all around is Lake Master. I mean, their mapping is just crazy good. I mean, me and you both know there's a lot of guys on the Bass Tour that'll have a Humminbird, even if they're sponsored by a competitive company. They'll put that thing up underneath their dash to hide it because, if you're ledge fishing or something down south, you pretty much have to have that type of mapping, and without it, you're in deep duty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it all the time. And I tell you, I leave my trucks unlocked when I'm at a gas station or different places. When my Mega's in there, I lock it and I watch from the window because I love using that thing. And even forward mode, it's fantastic. When you're looking for crappies, we ain't have no crappies left. That's how good it is. You can see them, and it shows. You could tell the size, and you can see out in the distance. And landscape, I haven't had a whole lot of chance to use that yet. I can't wait to use it perch fishing in shallow water, but in down mode, spectacular. The field of view is amazing. You got somebody nearby, like I have Heather, maybe 6-8 feet away, and I could watch her jig. 10 feet away, I could watch her jig. You can see your live bait moving. It's
it's pretty good in my my somewhat limited use of it. It's about 25 feet. You're really good. Really good.
Well, and a lot of times I'm fishing in 10 feet of water. Leech, Cass, Winnie, Red Lake. Lake of the Woods, I'll be in 22 to 32 as winter progresses out deeper. But I might come back when everybody's off on the mud. I come back because all that real estate is brand new. And you're fishing, so most of the time, 10 or 14 feet of water. You could see, it's not a pike because I see a back fin. Where a pike, it's just this big missile coming through and doing the stare down. But when I get into the 20s and 30s, it'll still be a blast. But, just getting used to the unit is important. Now you got a whole bunch of people out there that are using forward viewing, and they might be experts on it now. They're winning tournaments, but they haven't had it more than 2 years. It's a new technology. And so it takes getting used to it, and everything's going to change. And things get simpler. Like it doesn't get any simpler than a transducer, wire, stick in your unit compared to what everybody else is lugging around. So the world is anticipating it and is excited about it. And there's a few comparatives. There's no comparison with the number of things you can do with the Humminbird. And I have clients that want to do their thing, but
here's the $1 million question, because me and you are 100% on the same page, but I'm interested to hear your answer because I get asked this all the time. People always say, do I need a camera or do I need I'm going to say electronics. So whether it's Mega Live or Helix Flasher or what, Ice 55, whatever, but a camera versus regular electronics. when are you using one or the other? You know, because I know people, to me, it's both, but everybody knows if you had to have one, I think I personally would have electronics, not a camera. But where are you using each one? Or maybe the camera would be easier to describe.
Well, I never leave home without an Aquaview, and this is one of the reasons. In when you're fishing panfish, you can use your Mega Live now. I could look for a greater distance and then go drop it in down view. You're watching the bluegill come up and grab your waxworm, but it doesn't have your hook. And then the second gulp, it's got the hook. You set the hook, so you don't miss any fish. And then you could see if they're bluegills, rock bass, or crappies or whatever. You can look for spot on the spot. Like I can look for hard bottom in forward viewing mode with my Mega Live, but I can go over there with the Aquaview and see down that hard bottom, there's a log, and I'm going to fish right here. Not so close that they go under the zebra mussel log and wrap you, because you're going to lose walleyes, pike, bass, whatever you hook under that log. Aquaview gets you spot on the spot, but you watch fish bite. In Unleached Lake, the water's clear, the walleyes come up. I use a micro revolution and got it down there in down view mode, and I could see the fish come up. I look to my hummingbird because I could see him in the distance, and I know it's coming. Then I look to the Aquaview screen, and it's multi-view is what I call it, and so I can use both in conjunction to each other. So I'm not looking at a dead space on the Aquaview when the walleye isn't there. When he comes in, you're looking on this screen, you go over here, and it's fantastic. And you can change your jigging cadences depending on how the walleye reacts to your bait. If the walleye's doing a stare down, it could come and kill it, or it's just not quite sure, it's not ready to eat. And if it swims away and doesn't come back, that fish is coming back in a little bit. I see it all the time. And you can see they have a blemish, a welt, a cold water wart, and that's the same fish you catch later. So they do what you call a drive-by, but in fishing. And
no game warfare.
Yep, the drive-by walleye is going through, and then if they circle around right away, you're going to catch that fish, because as soon as they circle around, they're coming in to attack. So it's like an airplane landing at an airport. They have to approach it just right, and so it comes up, and they're going to hit your jig, and it's just amazing. You learn so much from both, but the Aquaview really gives you, it's like using your eye when you're down there. But if you're in dark water, you can still have silhouettes. If you're running and gunning, if I'm looking for fish in weeds, I like to put infrared on the Aquaview, and you can see crappies. They flash real platinum and bright and shiny, and it's a real good way to find them. But now Mega Live, here's the thing: they're both so good. Mega Live, you see movement along the weed strands, so it's there, and we're learning more and more.
I mean, a camera is gonna positively identify things down there. Like when I was at Cascade last year, we dropped the camera down and 100% knew that these perch, these balls, like you just showed on the graph there on your little save deal from tonight, they were just like 3 or 4 inch perch, but there was like 50 of them. And so they looked like, a clumps of bigger fish, or maybe it's the type of weeds or the bottom or something. But so most of the people listening to this podcast are walleye or perch guys through the ice, at least by the questions and stuff that we get. So
yeah.
If you were in deeper than 20 feet of water, what would be the Aquaview camera to look at that we should think about? What model?
Well, if you're fishing, if you want to be real stealthy and you want to run and gun and you want to fish off a bucket or stand, I'd use Micro Revolution. But the HD7 has a green screen remover, which takes out any. It has a program which makes your picture clearer and you can see better. And it's almost like spy game stuff. So HD7 is nice. You can plug it to a big screen if you've got a wheelhouse. But more importantly, even on Lake of the Woods, where the cameras don't really work up there. I'm like, you want to see? And I gave one to Mark Arneson to walk around with last year. He couldn't believe you could see a long ways. It all depends on what the freeze up did. If the mud gets kicked up really bad, it takes a while to settle down. The water looks like chocolate milk. Well, if you can't see with your naked eye, you could still see silhouettes going by. So I'd say if I had to pick one, I really like the Micro Revolution 5. And then walleyes are not afraid of it, and some fish will actually bite on it. But if you want to see the best image possible, the HD7 rocks. It's just amazing. And it's an open water, so you got both seasons. You don't want to use the micros okay in open water if you're still fishing, but the HD7, you could hook up weights. Then you could use it in Detroit River. You could use it on Erie, and you could put a lot of weight. You could click on a bunch of weights and a fin, and you can really cook down a sandbar and see what's really there.
Those cameras have just come crazy far, and same thing with like the Humminbird, the Mega Live, and even it wasn't that many years ago I was using an Ice 55, I think it is, and I still do, but the helixes are what the flasher is just with the chirp. It's just crazy. And I hear guys all the time at seminars, I'm sure you do too, they're like, oh, you don't need all that fancy stuff. Man, well, it sure does help you. I mean, it just helps. There's you can't question that. If you say it doesn't, it's because you haven't used them.
If you're fishing, then it don't matter. But if you're fishing against the group of animals that I fished against in the tournaments, it is a big game changer. And now it's like a statistic when you hear how many people were in this tournament of 100 boats that actually didn't have forward viewing. And you'd hear, oh, there was 4 of them that landed in the money, but they're never some could be at the top. But Heather and I did the I Falls Bass Championship, and we ended up in 8th place. And we had side imaging and 360. We didn't have forward viewing, and we got it now. Watch out. That's quite a field there. I mean, Gussie wasn't in it this year, but we had a lot of. There's some. He's a Bassmaster guy. There's other touring bass people. We do it because it's fun.
All right, producer dude, I'm going to ask him. You know what I'm going to ask him right now? Do you have
share a story?
No. His tip to leave us with.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Producer, we're going to bet $1 on this answer? Bro, a lot of guys choke on this when I say give me
whether
one
he'll
good
have one or not. No, he stepped right up to when he went, oh, okay, he was like ready to go. So
okay. I was gonna say I was just seeing if I was gonna take your $1 tonight because I know you got this. You need to leave us because me and you could talk all night. But
okay,
leave us with one really good tip, like ice fishing, open water, doesn't matter. That is so. Why isn't people talk about this?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I can throw. I'll throw this to you. When I fish, and I recommend doing this, don't go to the bottom and then fish your way up. Start at the bottom of the ice and fish your way down. I'm using spoons, and I like to jig under the ice, refract metallic colors off the ice, which looks like a school of minnows. Draw fish in from the distance, and if you got a buddy, you want to outfish them. So big flashy spoon, and a Northland spoon for me, and I'm going to have coffin spoon or something, and I'm going to drop it incrementally, and fish can see from a distance, and they could see over weeds. Now remember, there could be something in their way, so jigging up high draws in fish from a distance, and then as you get closer to the bottom, they're already anticipating their feeding, and they're going to approach it. So sometimes if you're fishing in 20 feet of water, you get hit when you're 8-9 feet off the bottom, and then because that fish hit high, other fish see it from a distance and see the fight and battle. And on perch, you're plucking the star off the top of the Christmas tree, and crappies the same. You hear it in crappies, and that's one of the things I coined many years ago. But in perch, that fight, in bluegills, that fight draws them in, and walleyes get excited when other walleyes fight, and I've seen it many times. Fish from the bottom of the ice down, try it, and use a spoon, and
dude, that was an amazing tip. And I know that to be true as well. Not only was that a good tip, producer, dude, that was a really good explanation. Like that was like a doctorate level explanation.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And open water works also. And we're finding out more and more that walleyes aren't on the bottom when they're feeding.
That is a fact. They hang out there, but not when they chew them.
And those same spoons work in open water. We limited out many days this year, over 70 degrees, pitching coffin spoons and jigging them through sandgrass where other like puppets and things would gather up the grass. These you could loft better, and the spoons tumble and they do something different. But I noticed when you jig a spoon, sometimes it goes this way or that way. I think sometimes when that spoon goes back at them, they slam it. And when they're chasing perch and the crayfish start molting and there's bug hatches, they're grabbing stuff out of the water column. but it's a crayfish molting period. You can catch them on spoons. You don't have to drag harnesses.
Yeah, that's the coffin spoon is like a buckshot that glides, people, and that is it's a naughty spoon. That's for sure.
If you're perch fishing, though, you want the Brobug spoon. Remember, perch tastes good too.
They do. Well, bro, I want to thank you for giving us your time there. I know we kept you up a little bit there because we both got to get on the water tomorrow, but really appreciate your time and some of that good insight with ice and beyond.
Hey, let me know if you get ice there. You know, I don't mind walking a long ways either. So if you get some ice, don't forget to let me know.
I know a guy will give you a ride.
Okay. You guys have a great night and be safe. We don't need statistics to hurt our sport.
No. Thanks for tuning into the Bigwater Podcast. I'm Ross Robertson with my buddy Brian the Brosdahl. Make sure you check us out at bigwaterfishing.com. Bigwater Fishing on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and then you can check out this podcast through bigwaterfishing.com and YouTube, or if you go to the digital downloads on Stitcher, Spotify, Google, and Apple. I think I hit them all, didn't I, producer?
I don't know.
With that, we are out.